If you live near Chicago's logistics hubs, the trucks that pass your street could be part of a national supply chain, legal or not. The 4 a.m. surge exposed how shipments are split here and fed east, but the twist was financial. Cash boomeranged through shell companies and crypto, then resurfaced as investments in real estate and fleets you might recognize. I'll show you how investigators followed that money, where it hid, and why cutting those streams protects more neighborhoods than a single raid ever could. 22 cities moved at the same minute. 5,000 arrests landed before sunrise. In a town where whispers travel faster than sirens, how did no one tip the targets? The answer started months earlier in rooms without windows, where the plan treated time like a weapon and every minute like a fuse. The warrants were stacked in synchronized packets, sealed under case numbers that never touched open systems. Teams split before dawn, one column for warehouses and freight depots, one for ports and airport cargo, one for court clerks who certify the paper that launders cash. Judges signed in parallel, not in sequence, so no single calendar gave away the scope. At 3:59, the clocks were synced. At 4 o'clock, every door moved. Leaks had wrecked past cases. A single insider text had once cleared a stash location and burned months of surveillance. This time, the playbook cut every line that message could travel. Targets were color-coded by priority and risk. Briefings ran in tight cells, each cell holding only its color. Rolling activation codes unlocked the next layer only minutes before movement. Devices went dark at the last possible moment. No personal phones, no radios tied to agency nets that had ever been compromised, and no chatter outside the grid. They learned the hard way. A prior county deputy had warned a cousin, and a warehouse emptied in 90 minutes. Here, no deputy saw the full list, and no local channel carried the timing. The plan assumed a weak link existed and built past it. If one team froze, a redundant team owned the same target with a separate route and a separate judge's order ready to go. The comms grid looked plain on paper and ruthless in practice. Agents carried preloaded warrant packets in tamper sleeves that opened with a time code. Maps were air-gapped, printed on heat paper with disposable overlays. No GPS trail, no shared links. Silent geofencing cued perimeter cars when a target device crossed an invisible line, not to chase, but to lock intersections and hold exits. The only signals that mattered were green lights on a clock and boots clearing hallways. Interagency task forces lifted tactics from counter-terror playbooks, tight time windows, layered teams, fallbacks for every node, and judges staged in parallel to keep momentum if one chamber stalled. The doors provided the noise that covered the quiet work. While breachers took hinges, collectors scooped the real ammunition, binders with totals, phones set to auto backup, and hardware wallets clipped to key rings. That first 5 minutes paid out. Ledgers named routes and rates, contacts linked to account numbers and carrier codes. Keys unlocked seed phrases and vaults. What looked like scraps turned into a map of money moving through banks, trucks, condos, and checks that had the right signature and the wrong source. The next moves wouldn't involve rams or flashbangs. They would roll through boardrooms, bid openings, and escrow desks where silence can be louder than a battering ram. What if the most important thing in that warehouse wasn't a pallet or a kilo, but a neat stack of invoices that quietly bought a city block? Start in Chicago's freight lanes. Cash counted in back rooms near rail yards got split into small drops sized to look like daily receipts. Runners moved those envelopes to clients that existed on paper, dispatch firms with rented desks, customs brokers with a P.O. box, and warehouse services that billed for short-term storage. From there, the money slid into trade-based schemes. A load sheet claimed 20 pallets when 10 actually shipped. A customs declaration listed premium goods while the trailer carried low-value items. On paper, revenue swelled. In the yard, the cash had a place to hide. Dirty money doesn't survive long as street bills. After a few hops through shells and freight invoices, it suddenly looks like freight revenue or rent from a tenant. A dispatcher's fee becomes a line item. A cross-dock expedite surcharge covers a transfer. Landlords book deposits from an LLC that pays on time, every time, and nobody asks what the tenant actually sells. Here's the mechanism. Shell LLCs with forgettable names sign fake logistics contracts. Cross-border trucking firms issue inflated invoices that justify large payments for priority customs escorts, or refrigerated handling that never occurred. Cash pickups pose as COD settlements at the dock door. Driver hands over a pouch, office logs a receipt, accounting books it as receivables cleared. The loop completes when a factoring company buys the fake invoices at a discount, wiring clean funds back to the shell. A second channel ran warmer. Miami wires hit offshore crypto exchanges through OTC brokers who specialize in large, quiet fills. Mixers sliced the flows, then returned funds labeled as investment capital. Capital turned into loans or equity stakes in U.S. shells, giving the money a corporate suit and a backstory. Trade-based money laundering and mirror trades built ledgers that looked lawful. Funnel accounts received deposits from dozens of branches, then zeroed out into a main operating account. The paperwork matched just enough to pass a glance, but never enough to pass a real audit. A mini-story tells the shape. A mid-size fleet added 3 new tractors paid by a leasing affiliate. That affiliate was a Mailbox LLC. Its funding came from an exchange account in Malta routed through a broker. The fleet's books showed lease obligations and fuel receipts, so the growth looked earned. Influence followed the spend. Funds bought a nightclub with steady weekend cash, a strip mall near an interstate exit, and a repair shop that later won city contracts. A political committee received a check from a business owner whose revenue came from those shells. Doors opened because the paperwork looked clean. Those ledgers grabbed in Chicago cross-referenced shells with drop addresses and freight bill numbers. Bookkeeping turned into a map for asset seizure. The trail pointed to new targets, boardrooms, city bids, and escrow offices ready for the next knock. Why would a cartel keep a ledger in code if the real code was a 64-character key? Phase 2 moved fast. Hits at ports and financial nodes turned up phones still logged into exchange apps, seed phrases tucked into phone cases, and password managers that stored both the vault and the root. Customs holds on containers led to office searches. A compliance subpoena hit a remittance shop while a parallel team pulled a registrar's records for the shell that owned the consulting account. Each grab fed the next, and the pile of devices started to read like a network diagram. Offshore exchanges and mixers claim to erase fingerprints. They turn big movements into fragments, route them through fresh addresses, and hope time buries the trail. But exchange compliance teams and blockchain analytics don't sleep. Risk engines flag patterns. KYT pings when deposits land from known clusters. When one desk stumbles, another flags the same wallet family and sends a notice before the next hop clears. Here's the loop that ran under the invoices. Cash couriers made deposits into funnel accounts scattered across branches. OTC brokers took those balances and converted them to crypto in chunks designed to avoid price slippage. Funds rolled to offshore exchanges where new accounts, opened with thin documentation, layered the trail. Capital circled back as loans or equity into U.S. shells that now looked like investors backing fleets, condos, or import expansions. Speed came from stablecoins that moved value across chains without bank delays. Privacy coins handled the hops that needed cover. Then came the off-ramps. Lightly regulated jurisdictions wired fiat to payment processors or correspondent banks that still accepted risk from certain exchanges. The money reappeared as clean dollars with a contract attached. Travel rule enforcement and KYT started to choke that flow. Clustering heuristics linked fresh addresses to known wallets. Exchanges saw mirror moves between accounts and flagged the pattern. Mutual legal assistance treaties let warrants cross borders, turning a request into a freeze while the case number stayed sealed. When one hub complied, the chain broke 2 or 3 steps down. One apartment deal shows the shape. A title agent flagged a late wire that missed a cutoff by minutes. The buyer's proof of funds came from a ledger wallet tied to an OTC desk that had tripped alerts. A parallel subpoena locked the escrow, while a civil seizure order tagged the property. The keys in the seller's file matched a seed phrase pulled from a phone bagged at a port. Some exchanges cooperated and froze balances while the warrants flew. Others stalled, asked for clarifications, and saw their banking dry up when partners read the same alerts. The game turned from speed to survival. Encrypted ledgers gave up master keys and routing notes. Combined with analytics, those notes mapped the pathways, linked the shells, and opened wallets. Agents seized balances mid-hop and clawed back millions. With accounts frozen and assets tagged, the next front wasn't a warehouse. It was a courtroom and an auction block. Cutting the money did more than slow supply, it drained status. No jets, no safe houses, no retainers on call. Bribes ran dry, middlemen lost favors, and managers had to rewrite schedules because drivers, fronts, and vendors wanted cash they couldn't move. Your part is small but real. Ask your city to publish vendor lists and contract changes. Use beneficial ownership rules when you open accounts or file bids. Support financial crimes units and their budgets. They turn ledgers into warrants. The next surge isn't at 4 a.m., it's at the bank counter, the title office window, and the line where you mark a ballot. If this breakdown of how financial investigations dismantle criminal networks opened your eyes to the real battleground, hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts on money laundering tactics, and subscribe for more deep dives into how law enforcement follows the money trail.